Hi, folks. Thanks for watching my monologue. As America starts to reopen, just remember that Guns Etc. never closed. They still have over 10,200 square feet of ammo, firearms, and accessories, including safes, and they remain open for business. Stop by their huge store in Mesa or just click on gunsetcetera.com. And if you like my monologues, please subscribe to 960 The Patriots YouTube channel. Thanks. Welcome back. Monday, June 15th, 2020. In the 3rd century BC, one of the most famous Greek cities was Sybaris. The word Sybarite comes from that, according to the Penn Museum. I was thinking of this and the quite right analogy to mayors and police chiefs and others joining in the crowds of protesters, not protecting communities, but bending to their antagonists, kneeling with them, led me to the story known as the Dancing Horses of Sybaris in the Moral Compass. May I read that to you? In the south of Italy, there was once a flourishing Greek colony called Sybaris. The town was well situated for commerce, the surrounding country was very fertile, the climate was the finest in the world, and for some centuries, the Sybarites were industrious and enterprising, carrying on a profitable trade with other countries and heaping up immense wealth. But too much good fortune finally proved their ruin. Little by little, they lost their habits of labor and thrift and instead gave themselves up to pleasure. Finally, leaving all kinds of necessary work to their slaves, they laid aside the cares of life and spent their days in eating and drinking and dancing and listening to music or in attending the circus and watching the feats of acrobats and performing animals. It is said, indeed, that prizes were offered to any man who would invent some new kind of amusement. A certain flute player hit upon the idea of teaching the horses to dance, and since those creatures were as fond as their masters of pleasure, he found it a very easy thing to do. It was not long before the sound of a pipe would set the heels of every war horse in the country to beating time with it. Imagine, if you please, a whole nation of dancing people and dancing horses. What a free-from-care time of it they must have had. But the most pleasant summer must come to an end, even for grasshoppers. Sybarites had for neighbors a community of hard workers, students, and tradesmen, called Crotoniates, who lived temperately, drank water from the original Croton River, listened to lectures by Pythagoras, and looked with longing eyes upon the fair gardens and stately white palaces of Sybaris. The Crotonites several times came to blows with the Sybarites, but as their army was much smaller and they had no cavalry whatever, they were beaten in every battle. Their foot soldiers were of no use at all when opposed to the onset of the Sybarite war horses. But true worth is sure to win in the end. When a spy reported to the Crotoniates that he had seen all the horses in Sybaris dancing to the music of a pipe, the Croton general saw his opportunity at once. He sent into the Sybarite territories a large company of shepherds and fifers, armed with nothing but flutes and shepherd's pipes, while a little way behind them marched the rank and file of the Crotoniate army. When the Sybarites heard that the enemy's forces were coming, they marshaled their cavalry, the finest in the world at the time, and sallied forth to meet them. They thought it would be fine sport to send Crotoniates scampering back across the fields into their own country, and half of Sybaris went out to see the fun. What an odd sight it must have been, 1,000 fancifully dressed horsemen, splendidly mounted, riding out to meet an array of unarmed shepherds and a handful of ragged foot soldiers. The Sybarite ladies wave their handkerchiefs and cheer their champions to the charge. The horsemen sit proudly in their saddles, ready at a word to make the grand dash, when hark! 1,000 pipes began to play, not Yankee Doodle or Rule Britannia, but the national air of Crotona, whatever that may be. The order is given to charge. The Sybarites shout and drive their spurs into their horses' flanks. What fine sport it is going to be, they thought, but the war steeds hear nothing, care for nothing but the music. They lift their slender hooves in unison with the inspiring strains. And now the armed Crotoniates appear on the field. But the pipers still pipe, and the horses still dance. They caper, curvet, caracole, pirouette, waltz, trip, the light fantastic hoof, forgetful of everything but the delightful harmony. The Sybarite riders have been so sure of the victory that they have taken more trouble to ornament than to arm themselves. Some of them are pulled from their dancing horses by the Crotoniate footmen. Others slip to the ground and run as fast as their nerveless legs will carry them back to the shelter of the city walls. The shepherds and fifers retreat slowly toward Crotona, still piping merrily. The sprightly horses follow them, keeping step with the music. The dancing horses cross the boundary line between the two countries. They waltz over the Crotoniate fields. They caracole gaily through their Crotonite gates, and when the fifers cease their playing, the streets of Crotona are full of fine war horses. Thus it was that the Sybarites lost the fine cavalry of which they had been so proud. The complete overthrow of their power and the conquest of their city by the Crotoniates followed soon afterward. For how, in any contest between so idle and so industrious a community, could it have been otherwise? Preparation for life, the moral goes, must include readiness for sterner stuff. Irving Kristol, the great professor and scholar of urban affairs, wrote, "If the principles that organize public life seem to have little relation to those that shape private lives, you have alienation and anomie, a melting away of established principles of authority. You have, in short, what he called a failure of the political process and of the exercise of individual freedom, the distribution of power, privilege, and property, because those can only work when those processes are seen in some profound sense as expressive of the values that govern the lives of individuals." I think we've lost a lot of that in a lot of our major cities or urban areas. The lives of so many of our youth, the lives of so many of our disconnected and uninhibited young are lives that know little more than immediate grievance as well as immediate gratification. No work, no effort, no sense of community, just grievance and gratification. All equally disconnected from history and the history of sacrifice. Sacrifice for what? Sacrifice for the greater good, for the community. We always knew that there were outliers. That's why we have police forces. But what do you do when you can openly attack the police and render them neuter? What do you do when you have multitudes of people with no sense of history or country or common purpose or common cause? You can either engage in a great effort of force to retake your community, or you can engage in a great relearning, as Tom Wolfe put it. The first is immediate, the second takes longer. I think we can do the first. I think we can, with a lot of opposition, engage a lot of force. The second will prove more difficult. We've been talking about it for a long time here. Can we do it? I don't know. But the extent to which we can will be the extent to which we avoid a civil war or a burning down of a great country. The time to suit up and do something is now. Not rallying and not protesting and staying quiet and retreating is not enough. Fiddling during a fire is equally destructive. It can bring down great nations. I hope we all recognize that there is a fire. I'm Seth Liebson. We'll be right back.